I got sent a message asking my thoughts on who would win in the likely fight between Andy Lee and Peter Quillin. I'll just set the scene briefly. I did a video about a fortnight ago saying that I thought Andy Lee was in line to fight Patrick Nielsen. It was being widely reported that fight had been made. Obviously, in the meantime, Al Heyman's got involved and has made a reported $1 million offer to Andy Lee to fight Peter Quillin. Now, bearing in mind when Andy Lee fought Matt Korobov, I think he got about $200,000. You know, we're looking at a purse that's 5 times as much as his last fight, and it looks like that fight is now going to go ahead. The Patrick Nielsen fight hasn't been announced. It doesn't look like Lee is going to get the homecoming that it looked like he wanted. It looks like he's going to have to take the money and go for the Peter Quillin fight. As long-time viewers will know, I'm a massive Billy Joe Saunders fan, and I have slight concerns over this. I wanted to see Lee Saunders. I thought it would be an excellent fight. I thought it would be a great occasion for the UK and for Box Nation. You'd have to say you'd have concerns over Saunders-Quillin. Not only because it's a more difficult fight for Saunders, but possibly because, let's be honest, Quillin's a bit inactive. Quillin's got Al Heyman behind him and all of that team. Who knows how long it's going to take for Billy Joe to get his mandatory fight if Lee was to lose the belt. Now, I've done a bit of research into this fight ahead of making this video. I read a forum sort of discussion, and I was amazed how many people were picking Andy Lee. The sort of basis of their opinion seemed to be that Peter Quillin's a coward, he's ducked people, he's been hurt in fights before, Andy Lee has got amazing punching power. I've got to admit, I make Peter Quillin a massive favourite in this fight. Massive. I think if he fights Andy Lee 10 times, he wins 8 or 9 times. Peter Quillin, I know people disliked what happened with Matt Korobov. I know people dislike his interview that he did recently on IFL TV. I've got to admit, I think the guy's underrated. I think he's one of the biggest punchers in the middleweight division. I think he's a bigger puncher than Andy Lee. I think he's a versatile fighter. He's got movement, he's got technique, he's got power. I'm a massive fan of Hassan Undam and Jikam. He's a really good fighter. Quillin messed with him. Dropped him 6 times. I mean, let's be honest, Andy Lee is not a guy it's hard to score points against. He was trailing in the scorecards on the scorecards in both of his last fights. He was trailing badly on the scorecards against John Jackson, a light middleweight. Well, Peter Quillin is a massive middleweight. This is a guy who's going to come to the ring probably as a cruiserweight, believe it or not. Certainly as a light heavyweight, possibly as a cruiserweight. You know, if Andy Lee's catching a jab from a light middleweight, you know, getting outboxed by a light middleweight, getting roughed up a bit, what's it going to be like against Peter Quillin? You know, the fact of the matter is, it's not going to take a great technician and a sort of great amateur pedigree fighter to outpoint Andy Lee. And we've seen him pretty much lose every round in his last 2 fights. I mean, Andy Lee does hit hard, but I think realistically we can't always be backing Andy Lee just on the basis of a one-punch knockout. In fighting Peter Quillin, he's fighting a much bigger, much higher calibre, much more proven opponent who's been in certainly with a much higher level of opposition than John Jackson and than Matt Korobov. You know, Quillin really is a world-class operator. In my opinion, probably the number 2 middleweight in the world after Gennady Golovkin. And that's a fight I'd absolutely love to see, Golovkin-Quillin, by the way. So, you know, if I'm honest, I think Andy Lee's hittable. I think he can be outscored. I think Quillin's got more versatility to his game. Clearly, Andy Lee, never rule him out. He's always got a puncher's chance. But that's how I view him in this fight, you know. A puncher's chance at best. I don't see him having any chance of outpointing Quillin. As I say, as a Billy Joe Saunders fan, it gives me some concerns. This fight as a whole, I really don't see it as competitive. I'm surprised by the reaction. Let me know I'm interested to hear from you what your thoughts are on this fight. Are you looking forward to it? And how do you see it going? Many thanks for watching.